Hello, my name is Odessa Langley, former daughter, erased sister, and as of last week, the woman who got a wine glass hurled at her face in front of 30 relatives because I wouldn't pour more wine. Crazy? Maybe, but that wasn't the insane part. The insane part was what happened next. The smell of grilled ribs clung to my hair long before anyone said hello. The sun sat heavy over Asheville that afternoon, pouring through the oak branches onto the plastic tablecloth I'd ironed that morning. My hands moved automatically, laying forks, passing napkins, checking the meat, while conversation drifted over me like a breeze that never touched my skin. Zinnia arrived half an hour late, gliding across the yard in a white linen dress that didn't dare wrinkle. The chatter shifted toward her, as though someone had turned up a light. Compliments flew about her hair, her new sandals, her effortless charm. I smiled because that's what peacekeepers do. Inside, I felt like part of the furniture, useful, polished, invisible. She didn't thank me for setting the table. Instead, she tossed her purse onto a chair and said, "You always make the best potato salad. Oh, must be the only thing you're consistent with." Laughter followed. My brother, Eloin, grinned weakly, eyes darting to me as if an apology lived somewhere behind his silence. It never made it out. I turned back to the grill, let the sound of sizzling drown the pulse in my ears. "It's ready," I called. People lined up, plates in hand, reaching over me to grab food, as if I were a server at a diner. No thank yous, no eye contact. When the plates emptied, Zinnia lifted her empty wine glass, shaking it like a bell. "Refill me?" she said. The tone wasn't a request. It was a command, sharp enough to cut through the laughter. I wiped my hands, felt the heat on my face, and answered quietly, "You can get it yourself." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. The cicadas outside stopped singing. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then I saw her eyes narrow, saw the twitch in her wrist before the sound cracked through the yard. The glass hit my cheek and shattered. A flash of red spilled across my skin. Wine, blood, both. Someone gasped. A child whimpered before being pulled away. "You worthless piece of nothing," Zinnia hissed. "When I ask, you serve." I blinked hard, vision swimming. The sting of alcohol burned deeper than the cut. Eloin rushed forward, but not to me. He caught Zinnia's shoulders, whispering something soft, comforting her. I pressed my fingers to my cheek and felt the wetness, the smell of metal mixed with sweet wine. "Eloin," I said, my voice barely there. He didn't answer. Someone muttered, "Let's just eat inside." My mother's hand landed on my arm, light but heavy all at once. "Don't make it worse, Odessa," she whispered. "People are watching." I looked around. They all were, pretending not to. No one moved toward me. No one offered a napkin. Their eyes slid away like oil on water. I tasted iron and disbelief. They'd rather protect her temper than my dignity. Looking back now, I should have known that silence had always been their favorite side dish. I walked into the house, past the buffet table, past the framed photos, where Zinnia smiled beside my brother in every shot that used to include me. The kitchen light was too bright. I turned on the faucet, rinsed the blood, and watched it curl pink down the drain. The mirror above the sink caught me. One side of my face flushed, the other pale and still. I looked like two different women fighting for space inside one body. I pressed a towel to my cheek until the sting blurred into numbness. Outside, I could hear them laughing again, conversation picking up like nothing had happened. Zinnia's voice rose above the rest, sweet, clear, practiced. "It's fine," she said. "She's just sensitive." Sensitive. That word stung worse than the glass. I sat at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence they left behind. My phone buzzed on the counter. Family group chat. Maybe someone had texted to check on me. I opened it. They were sending photos. Elwyn and Zinnia smiling with the neighbors, the table shining under the string lights I'd hung. My name wasn't tagged in a single one. I scrolled up all the way to the top. Messages about the party, the menu, the playlist. Not once did anyone mention me, except when Zinnia had typed, "Odessa can handle the setup. She's good at that stuff." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type something, anything, but the words sat heavy in my chest, untranslatable. I locked the phone, let it drop onto the table with a dull thud. My reflection in the dark screen stared back, quiet, tired, bleeding just enough to prove I was still alive. It wasn't the wine that burned. It was their silence. Looking back now, I didn't realize that moment had already drawn the line between who I was and who I'd have to become. That's where it all started. Start seeing for myself, especially the things I wasn't meant to. I pressed the frozen bag of peas harder against my cheek, dulling the sting into something less precise, less real. The blood had stopped, but the taste lingered. I couldn't scrub away the scent of grilled corn from my blouse. And no matter how many times I changed positions in the chair, I couldn't get comfortable. That's what it feels like when your skin doesn't fit anymore. In the silence of my room, I replayed the moment, not the glass or the burn, but Elwyn's face. Blank. He didn't flinch when it hit me. He didn't move until Zinnia gasped like she was the one bleeding. That silence, it was louder than the shattering crystal. Looking back, I realized it wasn't shock that froze him. It was choice. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. The phone sat face down on the desk. I picked it up again, half hoping maybe anyone, had texted to ask how I was. But the family group chat blinked with photos instead. Pictures of the food I cooked, plates arranged like magazine spreads. Everyone smiling in the background. No one tagged me. I scrolled back to the earliest messages about the barbecue. There was a flurry of excitement, suggestions, jokes. Zinnia had typed, "Let's just tell Odessa to show up early to help. She loves that kind of thing." I wasn't invited. I was assigned. I should have seen it coming. Something flickered inside. Sharp, cold, quiet. I backed out of the chat and opened my texts. There, beneath a dozen unread ads and spam, was one from Milo, sent a month ago. I must have missed it. I tapped it open, and a photo of a crayon-drawn birthday card filled the screen. "Happy birthday, Anto. I love you." His crooked letters filled the page, tiny stick figures drawn beside balloons and a yellow sun. I never received it. I stood up fast, too fast. My chair scraped the floor with a sound like protest. In the kitchen, I started gathering the party trash to throw out. Napkins stained with barbecue sauce, used paper plates, a half-eaten slice of pie. And underneath it all, tucked near the bottom of the bin, was the actual card. Still sealed, still whole, but discarded. She'd thrown it away. Zinnia. It wasn't the first time. When I was 12, I spent an entire weekend icing cupcakes for Aunt Cora's retirement party. I wore my best dress, stayed quiet like my mom told me to. I overheard Cora whispering in the hallway, "She's too much like her mother. Always needy." I didn't know then what it meant, but the cupcakes tasted like dust afterward. It just took 20 years and a flying wine glass for that sentence to land. Back in my room, I sat at my desk and stared at myself in the mirror again. The cut had dried, the redness turning to something uglier. I looked older, thinner. I looked like someone I wouldn't invite either. They don't forget me. They erase me. That realization felt heavier than the bruise. I reached for the drawer I hadn't touched in years. Its lock clicked open, a sound that echoed in my chest. Inside was a flash drive, small, silver, the kind my father gave me with important papers before he died. I picked it up, stared at it for a long time. Not yet. I closed the drawer, gently, deliberately. Some truths I was learning need the right moment. Before I turned in, I opened the group chat one last time. I typed something, nothing dramatic, just a line about being okay, about needing rest. Then, slowly, I watched my thumb hover over the send button. I deleted it instead. They weren't looking for me. Maybe it was time I started looking for myself. The betrayal had ripened long before I ever noticed the rot. By morning, the bruise along my cheek had turned the color of plum skins. I touched it lightly in the mirror, tracing its shape like a map I didn't ask for. The house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that waits to be broken by news you don't want to hear. I needed air, or maybe distance. Outside, the neighborhood smelled of wet grass and old charcoal. I walked without direction, past neat porches and flags fluttering lazily in the heat. Mr. Donnelly from next door waved his hose in greeting. "That was some party yesterday," he called. "Congrats to Elowen and Zinnia on the house." "Huh?" I stopped mid-step. "The house?" He smiled wider, not noticing my confusion. "Beautiful place. They said the paperwork finally went through. Must feel good to keep it in the family." My heart slowed, then stumbled. I mumbled something polite and walked off before he saw my face. The sunlight suddenly felt too sharp, cutting through the lie I didn't know existed until that moment. Back inside, I dug my phone from the nightstand drawer and scrolled through my old text threads with Dad. The last message from him, sent a week before his stroke, blinked up at me. "Don't worry. Oh, the deed stays in the family, with you." The screen blurred for a second before I could focus again. I set the phone down carefully, as if the truth could shatter like glass. I went straight to the sideboard where Dad used to keep important papers. The drawer groaned when I pulled it open. Folders stacked in messy piles, smelling faintly of paper and time. I searched through receipts, tax forms, yellowed envelopes. Each piece of paper felt like digging through layers of someone else's story. No deed, no copy, just emptiness where my name should have been. Looking back now, that was the first time I felt the floor tilt under me. Needing air again, I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over Instagram. Zinnia's new post sat at the top of my feed, her standing in the backyard, sunlight catching her hair. The caption read, "Home sweet finally ours. New beginnings. My father's house. My home. The one he swore would stay with me." Beneath the photo, comments bloomed like weeds. "So proud of you too. You deserve it. Hard work pays off. I stared until the image wavered. A house can't be stolen if no one admits you owned it. I didn't realize it then, but this was how they rewrote history, one smiling post at a time. I heard a clatter from the living room and followed the sound. Milo sat on the floor, building towers with his blocks. Daddy and Mommy bought our house after working so hard, he told his stuffed dog proudly. The tower leaned and fell. He laughed. I stood frozen, every nerve pulled tight. My father's life insurance money, my savings, the nights I stayed awake paying bills while Eloin chased promotions. None of it had left a trace. The foundation was mine, but the story wasn't. He looked up, still smiling. Aunt, can you help me build it again? I nodded, but my voice caught when I answered. Sure, buddy. He handed me a block shaped like a small door. I didn't say it, but I thought, that's the only door they left me. Later, when he went upstairs, I stayed in the living room. The afternoon light spilled across the photo wall. Family pictures framed in gold and wood. Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays. I leaned in to study one from 2 years ago. Zinnia stood in the middle, radiant, Eloin's arm around her, Milo on her hip. The space beside them, where I had been standing when the photo was taken, was cropped clean away. I blinked hard. My chest ached with a quiet kind of rage, the kind that doesn't make a sound but rearranges everything inside you. They had erased me before they even took the house. I pulled the heavy album down from the shelf and flipped through it page by page. There it was again, photos where I'd been edited out, replaced, shifted out of focus. It wasn't just oversight. It was strategy. I traced my father's handwriting on the back of one picture, Christmas 2020, family complete. The ink smudged under my thumb. When I slid the album back, something caught my eye, a corner of an envelope peeking from behind the frame. Dust clung to it. I pulled it free. My name was written across the front in my father's bold, deliberate hand. The paper had yellowed slightly, but the seal was still unbroken. I held it for a long moment, heart pounding. The ink wasn't dry, but the betrayal already was. Every version of me. Until this one, the one who finally stops being quiet. I sat on the edge of my old bed with the envelope in my hands. The room still smelled faintly of cedar polish and the lilac perfume my father used to spray when guests came over. My fingers trembled against the brittle paper. For a long moment, I couldn't open it. Maybe because once I did, the truth inside couldn't be undone. The seal cracked with a dry sigh. Inside was one sheet of paper, folded twice, his handwriting steady, but fading. Odessa, if you're reading this, something has been kept from you. The house, the land, it's yours. It always was. Promise me you'll keep it in your name. Don't let anyone make you small. Signed, dated, 2 weeks before his stroke. My name, his signature, our connection, ink and intent, but not on the deed anymore. I ran my hand down the page and noticed a faint smudge near the fold, a thin red mark. Lipstick. My breath caught. Red ember. Zinnia's favorite shade. She had opened it. She knew. I pressed the page against my knees until the paper wrinkled. You couldn't stand not being the center, I whispered to no one. Maybe to her. Maybe to myself. Looking back now, I should have known she would cross that line too. I stood, went to my desk, and pulled open the drawer, where I kept old files. The manila folder labeled property was still there. My father's handwriting again, neat and patient. I slid the papers out and unfolded the original deed. My name had once been written there in his hand, a faint indentation still pressed through the page, like a ghost refusing to fade. The current title listed only two names, Elowen Graves and Zinnia Castell. My pulse hammered. I examined the signature line. The stroke of my father's name wavered in ways it never had before, hesitant, uneven, forged. The pen used was one of his prized possessions from a commemorative case he kept locked in his cabinet, a gift he never let anyone touch. I whispered his name aloud, as though he might answer. Dad, they took it. There was no reply, just the tick of the clock on the wall, counting out the seconds of disbelief. I grabbed my phone and called Aunt Delphine. The line rang 5 times before the voicemail kicked in. Her voice, warm and slow. You've reached Delphine Langley. Leave a message, sweetheart. I hung up, tried again, straight to voicemail. When I opened the family chat a few minutes later, her name was gone from the group entirely, removed, deleted, like me. A tightness spread across my chest that wasn't just grief. It was fury, the kind that builds from being ignored too long. I sat back down, the letter still open in front of me. My eyes blurred, but I refused to cry. Tears were a luxury for people who hadn't been stolen from. The weight of the paper pressed against my palms, fragile yet powerful. I wanted to tear it apart and scream. Instead, I laid it flat on the desk, smoothing every crease like I was ironing the truth back into existence. Then I turned on my old laptop. The screen flickered to life, its hum sounding like resolve. One by one, I scanned each page, my father's letter, the old deed, the new one with its forgeries. Each file, name struck like a heartbeat, evidence_1, evidence_2, evidence_3. When the last document finished uploading, I created a folder and typed the title slowly, deliberately, Inheritance Theft, Langley v. Graves Castell. Seeing it there, black on white, steadied me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I was preparing. Outside, the wind shifted, brushing the curtains like a hand on my shoulder. For a second, it felt like my father was in the room again, telling me to keep my chin up. I closed my eyes and imagined him saying, "Don't let them win by making you quiet." That was when I decided. No more silence. Before bed, I opened my email and attached the scans to a new draft addressed to myself, backup in case anything happened to the originals. Then I uploaded everything to my private drive. I placed the letter back in its envelope, slid it into my old jewelry box beneath his watch. The leather band still smelled faintly of him. As I closed the lid, a strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes after panic, when anger turns into purpose. I didn't just lose a house. I lost every version of me that still trusted them. It echoes through courtrooms, inboxes, and every name they tried to scratch off history. By Monday afternoon, I was standing on my mother's porch, clutching a folder so tight my knuckles ached. I had rehearsed the words 100 times during the drive, each version quieter than the one before. Her porch looked the same as it always had. Geraniums by the steps, the chipped swing creaking in the breeze, a house that pretended nothing ever changed. She was sitting in her usual chair, a glass of sweet tea sweating on the table beside her. When she saw me, she didn't smile. "Odessa," she said, like my name was a surprise she didn't care for. I sat opposite her, laying the folder on the table. "I need you to see something." Her eyes flicked to the papers, but didn't move closer. "If this is about that house, I told you before, it's complicated." "It's not complicated, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "It's forged." Her fingers tightened around the glass. "You shouldn't throw words like that around. Zinnia said you've been upset lately." "Upset?" I opened the folder, slid out the 2 sheets, the fake deed, and my father's letter. "Try betrayed." She took a slow sip, as if time itself would water down my accusation. "That house was always too much for you," she said finally. I blinked. "Too much. You never had the head for responsibility," she continued, her tone almost kind. "Zinnia and Elowen, they're good with money, with appearances. It's better this way." He left it to me. I said quietly, "You know that." She gave a little shrug. "You don't get everything just because you stayed behind." Her words hit harder than the wine glass ever did. I stared at her, the woman who taught me to say thank you even when it hurt. "Stay behind." I repeated, "I stayed because someone had to take care of him, of you." Her expression didn't change, and I appreciated it. I almost laughed. "You appreciated it enough to let them steal the only thing he wanted me to have." She didn't answer, just reached for her tea again, as calm as a saint. "Maybe," she said finally, "I was wrong to keep you after the divorce." The sentence landed like a slap. My throat closed. I had come here for acknowledgement, for some thread of kindness, but what I got was deletion. Looking back now, that moment was the last time I expected her to defend me. I stood, but before I could speak, she sighed. "You always did overreact. You have your father's temper." That was the first time she'd mentioned him in months. I reached for the locket around my neck. The silver was warm against my palm. I pressed the clasp, and the tiny recorder inside clicked. His voice filled the porch, steady, deep, unmistakable. Richard Langley, leave the family home to my daughter, Odessa Langley. She's earned it more than anyone. The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend air. My mother stared at me, eyes unreadable. Then she exhaled. "You always did love drama." I met her gaze. "It's not drama, Mom. It's evidence." Something in her jaw shifted, but she didn't speak. "I have the recording," I said, my voice low. "I have the deed. I'm Phelan." Her eyes softened, not with remorse, but pity. "Odessa, you don't know what you're doing. Zinnia will come for you harder now. Let her try." For a second, neither of us moved. The wind picked up, stirring the papers on the table, rustling the leaves around us like restless witnesses. When I finally turned to leave, she called after me, her tone almost gentle. "You should have stayed quiet, sweetheart." I paused at the steps, looked back just long enough to say, "That's what you've always wanted." Driving home, the recording still echoed in my head, each word a heartbeat, each silence a scar. I didn't feel brave or triumphant. I felt stripped bare, but free in a way I hadn't been in years. That night, I sat at my desk under the dim lamplight, inserted the small CD I'd burned with the voice file, and sent a copy to my lawyer's inbox. The progress bar crawled across the screen, slow and certain. When it finished, I whispered to myself, They wanted quiet, but truth doesn't stay buried. It echoes. Now it's my turn to edit the narrative, but I'll use facts, not filters. Vanessa caught me just as I was unwrapping my sandwich in the faculty lounge. Her voice was cautious, but her eyes told me she already knew I wouldn't take it well. You should see what Zinnia just posted. Something in her tone made my stomach turn. I set down the sandwich, wiped my fingers, and pulled out my phone. The screen lit up with notifications, texts, Instagram tags, a dozen missed calls I hadn't noticed. Zinnia had uploaded a video clip. The thumbnail was familiar, me in the backyard, near the grill. I tapped it open. It started at the moment she held out her wine glass. "Refill me," her voice demanded. Then it cut, jarringly, a glitch of movement. The next frame showed me stepping forward, jaw clenched, hand raised. Out of context, it looked like I'd lunged first, like I'd snapped. I watched it twice before I stopped breathing. Looking back now, I understand what she was doing. She wasn't trying to win in court. She was winning the crowd. The comments poured in. "Wow, she's clearly unstable. No wonder she lost the house. Some people can't handle not being the favorite." There was laughter, applause emojis, heart reactions, and one that hit harder than the others, Eloin's like. The caption underneath read, "Not everything is as it seems. Some people just want attention." That was her gift, using half-truths like scalpels. I didn't just lose the house. I lost the verdict in the court of public opinion. That's where it all started. I left the lounge without a word, my sandwich untouched, my phone shaking in my grip. In the restroom, I stared into the mirror. The fluorescent lights made the bruising on my temple appear harsher than it felt. For a moment, I questioned what I saw. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I had imagined more than what happened. Maybe silence really would have spared me this. Then my fingers brushed the scar below my eye. The one left behind by the glass she threw. And I remembered I hadn't imagined anything. Pain never lies. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. When I got back to my classroom, there was a red flag on my inbox. HR. Subject: immediate administrative leave. Message: we've received an anonymous concern regarding your emotional behavior on campus and online. Pending review, you'll be placed on leave, effective immediately. I scrolled down to see who had been CC'd. My principal, the district head, not me. My laptop screen blurred. I blinked hard. This wasn't just personal. She was taking my name apart, piece by piece, professionally, publicly. I leaned back in my chair, the air suddenly too thick. But beneath the panic, something else pulsed, clarity. I opened my cloud drive, uploaded the full, unedited video from the barbecue, from the first hello to the final shattered glass. Then I opened the file folder labeled Langley v. Graves Castell. I dragged in the voice memo, the handwritten letter, the scanned deed, everything. Then I printed off the HR documents, initialed each one, and filed them into a physical folder labeled Defense. OL. Afterward, I typed a message into a blank email. To Attorney Rebecca Franklin. Subject: urgent supplemental evidence. Body: see attached. Timeline accelerates. Attached: every file Zinnia never expected me to find. Finally, I opened my text app and typed 4 words. To Zinnia. Message: you wanted attention. I'm happy to oblige. No emoji. No punctuation. Just precision. I didn't realize it then, but those 4 words would be the start of the end. That night, after I changed into sweatpants and sat by the window with my tea, my phone buzzed. An email alert. File access. Zinnia Castell opened inheritance theft. She had seen it. She knew what was coming. And just like that, she stopped playing defense. Too far gone to realize silence was no longer my cage. It was my sword. By Thursday evening, the group text lit up again. I almost ignored it until I saw Zinnia's name. We're doing a community potluck this weekend. She wrote, "Come show some grace." Grace. The word tasted like rust. She didn't want peace. She wanted a stage. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. Wouldn't miss it. That's where it all started. Saturday came heavy with humidity. I dressed in black from collar to cuff, not for mourning but for precision. The same backyard awaited. String lights swaying, picnic tables lined with casseroles, the smell of charcoal and arrogance thick in the air. People waved when they saw me. Neighbors, cousins, old family friends. All curious, all pretending not to know what had been brewing online. Zinnia was radiant, of course. White sundress, gold earrings, her hair in perfect curls. She greeted me like a stranger she pitied. "Odessa," she said brightly. "Didn't expect to see you. Brave, coming back here." I smiled thinly and held up the manila envelope in my hand. Bravery's overrated. This is just paperwork. Her laughter was light and rehearsed, always so dramatic. I moved closer, lowered my voice. "You can open it now, or wait for the court date." Her face twitched before smoothing back into the mask everyone knew. "I'm not interested in your little threats." "It's not a threat," I said softly. "It's evidence." Elowen appeared beside her, nervous and pale. "What's going on?" Zinnia waved a manicured hand. "Nothing, honey. She's having another episode." The crowd shifted uneasily. I could feel their eyes. Every family has a moment when the truth becomes too loud to ignore. This was ours. I placed the envelope on the picnic table beside the lemonade pitcher and walked a few steps away. The silence stretched. Then the sound came, low at first, then unmistakable. Sirens. A police cruiser rolled to a stop in front of the house. The officer stepped out calmly, clipboard in hand. "Miss Zinnia Castell?" She turned toward him, smiling with the brittle grace of someone trying to charm gravity. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" "I'm here regarding a complaint filed for forgery and digital defamation," he said evenly. "We'd like you to come down for questioning." The laughter died. The air tightened. "What?" she barked, voice cracking. "That's ridiculous." Elowen moved between them, stammering, "There has to be a mistake. This is family business." "Sir," the officer said, polite but firm, "family doesn't change the law." Zinnia's eyes darted toward me. "You did this," she hissed. "You're ruining your brother's life." "No," I said. "You did." The cuffs clicked. The sound was small but final. Phones lifted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Children stared, wide-eyed. Elowen stood frozen, watching as they led her toward the car. The white of her dress against the steel of the handcuffs looked almost poetic. I turned away before the door shut. Inside the house, the air felt cooler, emptier. On the wall, the family photos still hung in neat rows. I pulled a folded sheet of paper from my purse, taped it to the front door, and stepped back to read it one last time. This house never needed my presence, just my silence. I left it there, a confession and a eulogy all in one sentence. As I walked down the driveway, I heard footsteps behind me. "Odessa," Eloin called, his voice cracking. "Wait, please." I kept walking. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes. He followed a few paces behind, breath ragged. "You could have handled this differently. We could have talked." "We tried talking," I said without turning. "You chose her every time." "She's my wife," he said weakly. "And I'm your sister," I replied. "But you made that mean nothing." He didn't answer, just stood there, the space between us stretching wider than blood could cross. Looking back now, I realize he wasn't chasing me. He was chasing the version of himself that still believed silence was love. He kept walking behind me, but he was already too far gone. No one silences me again, not even the parts of me that still ache. A week later, I sat in the back room of the community center, the murmur of the audience seeping through the thin walls like a slow tide. I ran my thumb along the edge of my note cards. Though I already knew every word by heart, the local advocacy group had invited me to speak at their annual conference on domestic and family abuse. Someone must have read my case file. When the organizer peeked in to say, "You're up next," my mouth went dry. I wasn't afraid of speaking. I was afraid of being heard. I straightened the collar of my blazer and glanced at the folder beside me. Inside were copies of the deed, the letter, and a still image from the video. Proof that pain, when organized, becomes power. That's where it all started. The lights on stage were warmer than I expected, almost kind. Rows of faces filled the seats, some familiar from the neighborhood, others strangers who had wandered in looking for hope in someone else's story. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice shook on the first word, but steadied by the second. "My name is Odessa Langley," I said, "and this isn't just about a house. It's about being written out of your own story." A few heads lifted. I could feel them waiting. When people take your name off something you built, it doesn't just erase ownership. It erases existence. And sometimes the hardest part isn't losing what's yours. It's pretending it doesn't matter. The projector behind me flickered to life. The video played, the full, uncut footage from that afternoon. Zinnia's demand, the glass, the blood. Gasps rippled through the audience as truth took physical form. Then came my father's voice, rich and steady, echoing through the hall. "To Odessa, my only daughter. I leave this house because she stayed, held it, and earned it." I closed my eyes as his voice filled the space that had once been so full of silence. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small under it. I felt seen. When the video ended, I took a deep breath. "It wasn't the money," I said quietly. It was being asked to smile while I was erased. No one moved. The air was heavy with recognition. In the third row, an older woman pressed a hand to her chest and whispered, "That's me." I nodded toward her without meaning to. "It's a lot of us," I said. "We're told to keep the peace, to let things go. But sometimes letting go is how they win." I didn't realize it then, but that sentence would follow me farther than any court ruling. When I stepped off stage, applause rolled through the hall, not loud, but long. A few women stood. One hugged me in the hallway and said, "You gave words to something I thought I buried." I smiled, though my throat burned. You're not buried. I told her. You're still breathing. Back in the quiet of the green room, I checked my phone. A single new message blinked on the screen. From Milo. Anto, I told my class the house was yours. I hope that's okay. Tears came fast, uninvited. Not from hurt. Those tears had already been spent. But from something softer, something that felt like release. I typed back, "It's more than okay, sweetheart. Thank you." I sat there for a while, listening to the muffled clapping still echoing through the building. It wasn't applause I'd been chasing. It was acknowledgement. When I finally stepped outside, the evening air was cold, clear, and honest. The street lamps hummed softly. And for once, the quiet didn't press against me. It surrounded me like armor. Peace isn't the absence of noise. It's the space you carve when no one silences you again. No one silences me again, not even the parts of me that still ache. The cardboard flaps creaked. As I folded the final box shut, I sat cross-legged on the floor, the hardwood cool beneath me, my back against the wall of my new apartment. 3 weeks had passed since the last hearing, the last headline, the last handshake from a stranger who said, "You're brave." I didn't feel brave. I felt hollow, but it was my hollow now. The walls were bare, blank like a page before a story. No photos, no past, just plaster and breath. My bookshelf leaned slightly to the right, filled mostly with secondhand novels and a few court binders I hadn't found the will to store away yet. In the corner, the plant from my old porch drooped in a terracotta pot. I lifted the plastic watering can and poured slowly. "You made it," I whispered, unsure whether I meant the plant or myself. That's where it all started. When I opened the last box, I knew what was inside before I saw it. My hands paused above the fabric, stiff, faded red, a splash darker on one side. The blouse, the one from the night Zinnia threw the wine glass. I picked it up, not with grief, but with something closer to reverence. That shirt had held me in one of my most humiliated moments. It bore witness when no one else dared to. I folded it carefully and placed it at the back of my drawer. That version of me was gone, but she had survived, and she deserved to be remembered. I didn't know what was waiting for me next. A soft knock startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door without checking the peephole. Elwyn stood there, alone. He held a manila envelope, familiar and heavy in his hands. "I've transferred the deed," he said quietly. "Fully. There's no court order forcing me. It's just right." His eyes looked older than 3 weeks ago. Lighter, maybe, or emptier. I nodded, but didn't step aside. "Thank you." He shifted his weight. "I'm not here to apologize. I know that wouldn't fix it." "No," I agreed. "It wouldn't." "I should have protected you," he said, voice cracking for the first time in years. I looked at him. Not the boy I shared bunk beds with, not the man who let silence speak for him, but something in between. "You didn't lose me, Elwyn," I said softly. "You gave me away." He blinked fast, jaw tightening. He nodded once, tucked the envelope into the mail slot beside the door, and turned. I didn't watch him leave. Some goodbyes are too old to be new again. That's where it all started. Later that night, I sat by the window, phone in hand. No texts, no demands, just space. I opened the voice memo app and pressed record. They erased me. I whispered. I rewrote myself. This silence isn't empty. It's earned. I saved the file under a folder named Proof of Life. Then I turned off the light. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. Some people inherit houses. I inherited silence. And finally, I made it mine. Some people inherit houses. Others inherit silence. But what if that silence becomes your power, not your prison? Have you ever been written out of your own family story and had to write yourself back in? If this story made you feel seen, stay with me. Subscribe for more true stories where quiet voices finally get heard.